Welcome to Blog Talk Radio in high fidelity.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. It's Woody here from the QBO show. Real excited for today's show. We're going to have Joe Woodard on. He's going to be coming in a little bit. Just Stacy and I right now. We got 3 o'clock Mountain Time, so 5 Eastern, and hope you're all doing well. Thanks for listening in either today or for the rest of the week. Just before I kick it off, just opinion statements or views that I might say on the show don't necessarily reflect those of Intuit, and Intuit is not affiliated with the show. So, Stacy Kildall. Stace, what's going on?
Well, it's been an interesting week. I'm doing okay. It's been a pretty interesting week this week, accounting wise. I just want to let everybody know the chat is open. The show chat is open,
Oh, cool.
So I can see people popping in there. I just want to let everybody know. You know, I think it's going pretty well. It's been a weird week news wise. I mean, accounting news wise. Everything that we're going to be talking about today, and Rod Drury leaving Xero, which is a weird, that was weird. And I don't know if you read the press release on that, but it was the way that they described him was very interesting. Like, Rod has never been one to be shy about his opinion or something. That was very weirdly phrased. So just interesting week, a lot going on.
Yeah.
Joe is coming on the show, and one thing that first I want to mention our sponsor. We have a new sponsor that came on this month, or maybe last month, February, and it's neat.com. So they handle receipt management. And to get a little bit more information, if you go to our website, which is qboshow.com or radiofreeqb.com, you can click on the Neat logo, and that will take you directly to the accountant page, and that gives you all of the information that you need to know about their partner program. So we want to thank Neat for sponsoring. And just to give everybody a little bit of background about today's show, because I've had so many people contact me since yesterday. Like, my phone has been blowing up, like my Facebook messaging has been blowing up. So here's how this all went down. Yeah. Monday, as everybody knows, the Woodard, what I refer to as Woodard conglomerate, or one Woodard. I always like to kind of tease Joe a little bit. The Woodard Events, Woodard Group, whatever. Honestly, I swear I still don't know what it's called. Woodard Group, Woodard Events. I should know. But anyway, Joe basically sent out email letting everybody know that Scaling New Heights had changed venues. And I happen to check my spam. It's one of the things that I do every morning when I check my emails, just to make sure that the stuff in spam is actually spam before I blow it out of I delete it forever. And that came in through spam. And so I forwarded an email to Liz and to a couple people that I know at the Woodard, and said, okay, just clarification, you guys, about hotels, you guys are going to be sending a list of hotels, and there's not going to be just one hotel. And they were like, and Joe replied, and he said yes. And so Joe and I were emailing back and forth, and I said, this came in the spam. And, I've already talked by that time, we had been emailing back and forth a little bit throughout the morning, and I had kind of had some contact with some other people who hadn't gotten that email. And I said, why don't you come on the show to talk about this and clarify this? And, just kind of get it out there. And he said, oh, that's a great idea. And he said, well, I'd rather he actually, in the email, he said, I'd rather nail down the details about the hotels before I come on. And I said, no, just come on now. And then when you get all the details done for the hotels, we can have you back on. It's no big deal. So he says, okay, great. And then, so I get him on the schedule. I post it up on the website. I get the show all ready. And then yesterday, obviously the shit hit the fan. I mean, there's no other way to describe that. It posts on CPA Practice Advisor, everything that's going on with Woodard Events LLC, which is this is why I call it Woodard Conglomerate. So it's the Woodard arm that owns Scaling New Heights. So it's announced that they're filing bankruptcy. And so that kind of changed the narrative and kind of changed what we're obviously going to talk about. I do want to say that Joe and one thing I do want to mention is this is really big news. And we have a really long history with Joe. And I made sure that he and I touched base before the show. And I just wanted to make sure that he was prepared for the questions. So I wanted to mention that there are conversations that are happening. They're happening via text. They're happening in Slack. They're happening, people are texting me, they're Facebooking me, they're having conversations online in different forums. So the conversations and the questions that I'm going to be asking him, they're happening, and I wanted to make sure that Joe had the opportunity to get his voice out there and be a part of the conversations and get his side of the story out, because obviously he can't be in every text message and every Facebook conversation and every forum and be out there. And I just thought it was a fair thing to do. I mean, it was already scheduled. The other thing I wanted to mention is I felt like I would be, like, us as a show were maybe treading a fine line, because we are friendly with Joe, but I wanted to make sure that Joe knew I wasn't gonna ask the kind of fluffy, very obvious questions like he did in his the intuitive accountant interview, that were obviously geared to put him in the best light and to get the information out in the best light possible, the most favorable, and that some of the questions may be a little difficult. But I didn't want him to think that we were being adversarial or we were being a bully or anything like that. And just that we wanted to give him, and we're on the same page. And so I just wanted to clarify that before we bring him on. That is not our intention. That's not my intention, any of the questions that are coming on. We respect Joe. And because of the relationship, I'm really glad that he decided to stay and continue and stay and come on the show and talk to us about this, because it's a BFD, like, this is a big deal. And the other thing that I want to let everybody know is I have personal experience. I know firsthand the stress, what kind of stress people go through when they're filing bankruptcy. A lot of people don't know this, but my husband and I had to file personal bankruptcy when I was pregnant with our first kid. And it was one of the most stressful things I've ever had to do. So I completely firsthand understand the stress in and of itself of getting to that point where you have to say, okay, this is the only option I have. So that's the other thing I want to let everybody know. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but the questions that people have, and I want to give Joe a chance to answer them. So
totally,
that's all I want to say.
Yeah,
that's all I wanted to say.
Joe many times on the show, and I learned most of my QuickBooks stuff from Joe Woodard, so as many people have. So just grateful for his time. Do you want to bring him in?
Yeah, let's bring him in. But what's the thing
that
he always, the excess golden parachute? Isn't that your thing that you
golden
always
parachute? Yeah. Although I don't think it's in there anymore because the 1099 settings are moved. But I think up to 2012 was my favorite tip. But Yeah,
I know. I love that.
Oh yeah, I got a lot of good stories for that one. So I think it's 404 area code. I'm just going to go ahead and bring him right in because that looks like it landed to me. And I just wanted to welcome everybody and to Joe Woodard on the show. Joe, how's it going? I haven't talked to you in years, and I just hope you're doing well. So thanks for coming on today. How are you doing?
Yeah. Well, we are very busy over here, as you might imagine. It's been a big week at Woodard, but I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. And Stacy, I want to echo, I'm absolutely, I'm ready for any tough questions because I want to provide honest and transparent answers. I think just getting the information out there is going to make a big difference. And, the more people know, the more they can make informed decisions about how they feel about us. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that. So we'll get right into it. We're going to dive into it. It's not really, it's out March 1st. Woodard Events LLC, and I know I joke with you all the time about Woodard Conglomerate and One Woodard, because I know that there's different things. There's like Woodard Events LLC, which is one part of your business, correct?
Yes, it is actually the only operational entity left. We used to have a lot of different ones. We had reasons for that, different equity ownership, different kinds of business activities. But as of the last, 12 to 18 months, Woodard Events has been the only operating entity at the company that I own.
Okay, cool. So Woodard Events LLC filed Chapter 11 March 1st. And I have to mention, I mentioned earlier the interview that you released yesterday. It's very obvious to anybody who's read it that it's not an interview that actually happened yesterday. Because, and what I'm wondering personally, and you and I kind of touched on this a little bit, is why, you know, like, I guess what I'm wondering is, it's very clearly, and you even mentioned when we talked right before the show that this was more kind of like almost like a press release. And so what I'm wondering is, why not just do a press release rather than making this seem like this sit-down interview that just happened to take place yesterday?
Right. Well, and it was an interview. It was an interview, but it was planned. And Gary, of course, as my business partner, up until recently, that's some other news, that I've divested my ownership in Insightful Accountant, incidental to this other, but just streamlining the portfolio. But, you know, Gary and I are good friends. We've worked together for a very long time. And I reached out to him and I said, okay, I want to, you know, get this information out. I could do a press release, or I could, you know, you could, you know, sit down and ask me some questions. So it was a collaborative effort, obviously. It wasn't a sort of a live interview like we're doing today. But it was really just getting out the same information. If we had pushed it out through a press release, we would have had the same information presented to the audience, and then it would have gotten picked up in the same way as it did by multiple press outlets. But I do want to say we had a communication strategy around this that got accelerated a little bit.
Okay.
So we filed the Chapter 11 last week. And we then thought that we could get through the first court set date where we could get a little more information shored up, have a little bit more public documents on file. And then we were going to communicate next week, you know, what the company was up to. But in the interim, I think it was CPA Practice Advisor must have stumbled across it from somewhere, and they pushed it out. So we, you know, the elements that we had already created and some of the strategy we had for communicating what was going on, you know, we did a rush job in getting that out there. And then we followed up that with the emails that we were going to send to all of our attendees. And we sent out those all in a single day, just to you know, get the word out, let everybody know what's going on.
Okay, so then you mentioned that you had a plan, and that kind of leads to my next question is, give us a little bit of background on the decision to file. I mean, like I said before we brought you on, I know the agony that you go through before you make this decision and you realize, all right, holy shit, this is really the only choice I have. And so can you walk us through a little bit of background on the decision? And when did you start making plans when did you realize, and then just give us a little bit of background, basically, is all I'm wondering. Like, when did all this start?
Yeah, when did it all start? You know, well, you can say in terms of, like, if you want to really trace the history back, it started at Scaling New Heights, 2009. In Scaling New Heights 2009, we didn't make money. You know, it was the very first year we lost money. And Intuit was really good to be present and support the show, but we weren't in their sponsorship pool, so we weren't getting any money from them in years 1, 2, all the way up into year 3. We just got a little bit of money from them by that year. So we weren't really funded, in any way by strong sponsorships. We had no sponsors the first year. And so, those first years we were building, and we were building kind of off the working profits of my QuickBooks consulting practice. And it was my day job, and the conference was kind of my side job. And then it began to build and began to become its own thing, its own entity. But then there were the seeds of a little bit of that, residual debt that was happening. And we were using the operational profits to keep ahead of maybe about a 12-month history debt cycle and moving forward. And as anybody can see if they go to the petition, rather than we had a couple of options that we did explore in terms of funding the innovations and rapid expansion of the show after it became such a phenomenal success. One was bank lending, We had the misfortune of reaching that point right about the time that banks became heavily regulated. Unsecured credit just wasn't flowing. We reached out to some VC and private equity companies, some venture capital, if you don't know the acronym, folks, and private equity firms. And it's very hard to find those in the education space. If I was developing a widget, a gadget, or a software product, you can go shopping around for VC funds. Not much in the education space. So we just kept building it off of multiple efforts. We had our QuickBooks consulting practice going. We launched a membership organization, and we were just earning all the money we could. But we were also putting a lot of that money right back into the growth of the company. And you know, my wife can attest, not taking a lot of it home, right? I was all vision driven, build. And so what we did is we worked out multi-year contracts with some of the hotels. And for example, if anybody looks at the debt schedule, they'll see that there's a debt still to the hotel in New Orleans from 2015. Well, we did a 2-year contract with them, 15, 19. We pay them off between those years. We come back, we do another show. Each time we do a show, these hotels get about maybe $1.5 million to $2 million in revenue between food, beverage, what you guys spend at the bar and the restaurants. Guest rooms is the biggest one. So, you know, they're fine. This is a reciprocal relationship. They're bankrolling things just a little bit. It was all stable, right? And we had revenue opportunities that we thought could bring us over the top of this pattern a little bit, but it was a stable situation. There was a major event that took place in August. Some of what we do here at Woodard Events is contractual work. Some of our clients that I won't name for NDA reasons are 10 times or 20 times the size of Intuit. And we had a massive contractual downturn, completely unexpected and blindsided us in August of this year. A contract that was supposed to pay out at $4.5 million ended up coming in at $1 million, even though it was funded fully and authorized. And the people that were managing it at this company were completely surprised themselves that the funds were withdrawn. So we took a multi-million-dollar hit. Now, as I'm just kind of sharing all the stuff that's going on here, we're not a massive company. I mean, we're a small business with a big brand. And I drive an $18,000 car. My wife drives a 10-year-old car. You know, we live in a moderate house. We're not rich people. We're just small business owners. And maybe we're a little bigger than some of the attendees that come to the show, smaller than others. Woodard Events is a $5 million revenue company. You take a $5 million revenue company that was going to grow, of course, with this contract. You give it a big 7-figure hit right up the broadside, and it's a struggle. So I worked from August all the way up to February to solve this problem. Some of it was, you know, trying to land new contracts with new clients. We got very close on some of those. We did actually start getting some interest on the part of some other educators within the space, and we were in conversations with them about that too, with full transparency of where we were on our balance sheet. Got very close on those, but none of it materialized. And when all the options began to kind of evaporate for us, and that was in February, I realized, well, okay, there's no merger coming, there's no acquisition coming, there's no funding coming, and there's no big contract coming. So it's time for me now to make a very, very difficult decision. Seemed abrupt to the rest of the world, but for us, it was really a 7-month process of solving a problem with an end result that was less than what we had desired. Now, through this Chapter 11, we can now restructure this debt. And this is what's important, Stacy. I have a couple of options. You know, one option was I could file a Chapter 7. This is all business debt. It's not personal. File a Chapter 7, go to my home, go to my cars, go to my wife, you know, my $18,000 car, right? Go to my wife, find another job someplace, open up a Panera Bread franchise or something, and get on with my life. But there are 2 reasons I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that because I don't walk away from people I owe money to. This Chapter 11 is not a way for me to not pay my debts. It's a way for me to pay them. So through the restructuring of the debt in the Chapter 11, I can pay these people over a multi-year period of time in a situation that's controlled by the courts. And it is my goal to work very hard to give them every single penny that I owe them. Now, the second reason I didn't want to do it, and this was equal to the first, is my vision, mission, and purpose. My vision, mission, and purpose is not to own a Panera Bread franchise or get into the real estate business. My vision, mission, and purpose is to transform small business through small business advisors. I can't do that if I'm making sandwiches. So to stay the course, to keep the vision alive, and to take care of my creditors, I restructured the company.
Fair enough. And that, I didn't know all that. I'm glad that, thanks. That was a lot. I mean, that's going into some detail about the contracts. I will say this though, and somebody had brought this up in one of the text messages, is that, so you have this project, right? Scaling New Heights, and then you have other projects. From the outside, it seems like those contractors who are getting the deposit for the next job, and they're using that deposit to pay off the expenses from the last job. From an outsider, that's what this looks like from the outside.
Right.
So
right.
So
well, and it's not unlike that, but there are a couple of things to note. It wasn't like rolling deposits through it. It's called kicking the can, right? It wasn't that. Right. Yeah, of course. It wasn't that. It was taking the profits from what was going to happen in the future years and investing those profits in debt retirement and operational expense. But also, it was done in a cooperative effort, an organizational effort with the hotel properties with whom I was partnered. And that gets me back to sort of the way that the hotels were funding the organization, because it was in their best interest to keep us coming back. And shows of our size that fit in their container are very rare. The general manager of the Hyatt Regency New Orleans said that we generate more revenue for him than the Super Bowl, and they are attached to the Superdome. So, they wanted us to stay in business with us, and they were willing to partner with us. So it was done with a measure of transparency with our hotel partners. They knew exactly what was going on. In almost every situation.
Fair enough. So the other thing that I have been hearing, and I want to preface this by this, I don't think this is indicative of the whole entire community. These are the conversations, I'm speaking to my experience and the conversations that I'm seeing and the things that people are saying to me, is that you have long spoken about being a trusted advisor. And the perception among some in the community, and it's not a sweeping generalization or anything like that, but the perception among some is that you, like, best case scenario, you either didn't budget properly, and I understand you explained this, but I'm just telling you what I'm hearing.
Sure.
Or in the worst case, possibly maybe mismanaged funds. So now this is why you're restructuring this debt. Either way, the way that they feel about this, and somebody else mentioned, you have created this family, right? People, they feel part of this Scaling New Heights family. And so what's happening right now is you're telling them to be trusted advisors to their clients, but now it appears, and you know how it is, perception sometimes is reality, right? We don't have any control over that. Like, perception for some is reality. They feel like maybe you haven't been a good steward to your own company, and they feel a little disillusioned, a little disappointed. I know one word has been sad. Is there anything that you want to say to them or kind of clarify? I mean, is there any and you can say no or whatever, it's up to you.
Well, I'm happy to speak to that. The bottom line is I absolutely made mistakes, and the mistakes were not egregious. They weren't. A lot of times they're mistakes that I can see very clearly in hindsight. I didn't make them intentionally in foresight. But I think the big takeaways, and people don't know my lifestyle. They don't know my livelihood. They don't know kind of what my family does or doesn't do. But we're not all, globally traveling. Where, if you see any pictures on Facebook of us traveling, it's almost always because we've earned a ton of hotel reward points from doing events. but we don't spend lavishly on vacations. We don't spend lavishly on cars, boats, jet skis. We extremely moderate lives. And I think that's important for everybody to know that, because if I had siphoned off a bunch of money from my company, living up the lifestyle, and all of a sudden can't pay my company debts, no one should trust me, because I would be untrustworthy. But instead, this was, and of course, I'm a little bit high of a risk tolerance as an entrepreneur, absolutely. And when I look back on it through the lens of hindsight, I can think, well, I could have done this differently or that differently. But the bottom line is, I was undercapitalized. And if we were to paint, say, a different scenario, let's say that I had found a PE firm or a VC firm, and they had invested $2 or $3 million in me 10 years ago, they would be extremely pleased with their return on investment. And without all of the scrappy financing and the distraction of me trying to self-fund the company, I probably would have they wouldn't even have that investment still sitting on the table. They would have gotten their full ROI. Over the years, the company had been more stable, and they would have loved their investment of $2 to $3 million. The fact that the hotel properties were making that investment instead of investors, and of course, the 7-figure broadside hit we got that was completely unexpected in August, it just threw us off kilter a little bit. But in as much as the hotels had become my investors, I'm taking care of my investors. I'm just doing it through a Chapter 11.
Fair enough. Next question I have is staffing changes. I know one of the things that we talked about on the phone really quick today was you said that some of the people that have left your company don't want their names mentioned, and I totally understand that, respect that. But you have had some staffing changes, and a lot of people are wondering, are those related to the Chapter 11? And if so, this is a multi-part question. So one, are the staffing changes related to the Chapter 11? And if so, how? And the next part is, well, answer that, and then I'll get to the next part of that staffing question that I have.
Okay, they're related to it in the sense that it is all part of one corporate restructure strategy. So as I'm looking at my broadside hit, I'm looking at the debt kind of balance sheet ratio. I'm looking at needing to solve the problem. It's a multifaceted approach. We restructure the debt, approach one. We streamline the organization, approach two. Now, what's allowing us to streamline the organization, quite frankly, it's something it's probably one of the mistakes I made. We talk about a family. A Woodard family has become very, very tight and very, very close. And I probably made emotional decisions holding on to team members longer than I needed to, just because of the camaraderie, the value, they were adding value. But the truth is, we had created systems, and we had created processes, and we had created standardization that allows a smaller team to create the same degree of output. And this situation forced me to make that painful decision to streamline the company alongside the restructuring of the debt. And it is proved out. Yeah, we've lost some key people, but all of the work of the conference, all of the work that we're doing, preparing events for our clients, all of the work we're doing for our coaching program is getting done. Everybody's handling the load. They were a little nervous at first, but then when they started to trust the systems and the leaders we had in place who aren't with us anymore, I want to give them some credit. They were amazing leaders. They didn't just do their jobs. They shared their knowledge. They democratized their knowledge, and they poured it into the systems. They poured it into the people. And one of the people, because I don't want to mention names, but one of the key people in my organization, and I might get a little emotional here because I care so much about her, but she came to me and she said, I know what's coming. I could see it. I've been part of all your conversations. I was transparent with my leadership team and then eventually my team through all of it. She said, I'm the one that needs to go first. I'm one of the highest paid people in the company, and my team knows their jobs. I've poured all of my knowledge into them for the last several years, and they can handle it. And that was so bold, and that was so brave, and I respect it so much.
And I know who you're talking about, and I'm just going to say she's freaking Wonder Woman. So now All right. So, and I understand how, because I mean, I know how hard that was. My next question about that, because these are key people, like you said, they have done a really great job, you know, training their teams and like you said, democratizing their jobs. Who is managing the show? Who is going to be managing Scaling New Heights?
Yep, and it's folks that some of you may know, like if you've been our instructors, you've worked with Liz Colley before. She's done a lot of her instructor coaching. Yep.
Adore her.
And she's fantastic. She's here. And Kelly Cantley, who did a lot of our work with sponsors over the years and also marketing, is taking over a lot of that sponsorship role. Kathy Roth, who joined our team back around Scaling New Heights 2016, is an amazing woman, and she does the work of about 2 or 3 people, and she's the backbone of the entire support system here. Our Institute team was not affected by this. They were already small and streamlined. The Institute's a smaller organization. They remained. And then the newest addition that I'm really excited about is my wife. You know, some people have always asked me, you know, maybe it was because of the Doug and Cheryl Sleater era or whatever, you know, we just don't see as much of your wife. And I'm like, well, you know, my wife works in the telecom industry. She was 22-year career manager in that industry. And then she retired from that and was raising our daughter when our daughter was smaller. And this has given me the opportunity, because you get scrappy, you know, when things are like this. It gave me the opportunity to bring her on board. And boy, she folded in fast. You could tell 22 years of customer service experience. She just plopped right in. And of course, her passion for the company and the organization and the vision is understood. And now I get to be with her every day, all day long, instead of just in the evenings. And I get to share this whole experience of getting through this difficult time and then continuing to empower small business advisors alongside her. And my daughter's here after school, and she does her homework in one of the cubicles, and even my dog's running around the hallway. So if there's a silver lining on this, I get a lot more time with my family.
Well, that's good. I don't know that I could work every day with my husband. I mean, I love him to death. I mean, like, obviously I really like him. We get along really well, but I don't know that we could, I don't know that much togetherness would be, I feel like he would be the one that would get like sick of me first, because I would get sick.
And that could happen here. That could happen here. You know, stresses of business ownership, right?
Yeah, I do get sick of me, and I have to be around me all the time. So I can see how somebody else would. Now,
before you hit the follow-up question, can I get back to the trusted advisor thing, because I want to speak to that specifically. You know, being a trusted advisor, being a coach to accounting professionals, and, you know, being a trusted advisor to small business clients, it is, and I know this will resonate with you because you and I tweeted back and forth about this a little bit. It doesn't mean you're perfect. I am extremely imperfect. I like I said from the stage of Scaling New Heights 2 years ago, you know, we're all messy people working with messy people to make the world a little less messy, you know. And, you know, not a lot of businesses can take, you know, a 7-figure contractual down, you know, broadside and funding challenges. It is challenging. So I'll say a couple things about it. If you're a trusted advisor to the small business world, you're going to have to advise into this kind of problem: undercapitalization, you know, restructuring of debt, however it is done. And you might even need to advise your client through the process of a Chapter 11 and everything that comes with it. Does that make your client, you know, necessarily, you know, a bad manager of their company? Well, all depends, right? You can help, if so, you know, train them. Sometimes they just took a couple hits. But this experience is going to make me a better small business advisor, especially if somebody's going through what I'm going through. But I think it's important for, you know, not so much for myself, but just for everybody listening in. One of the biggest obstacles I've seen on the part of the bookkeeping community and the CPA community is they think they must be a perfect advisor in order to advise. And I'm going to say, no, I think most importantly, you need to care about your clients, and you need to be knowledgeable in what's going on in their business, and you need to come alongside them doing relationship work. But if you wait till you're perfect, you're never going to get started. So
right. what I told my husband. That's very good. I appreciate that. That's what I told my husband. He was talking about getting married, and he said, well, we should wait until we get our bills paid off. And I said, well, then we're never going to get married. Like,
right.
it's never going, it's like laundry. It's never done, right? So you can't wait to do that. So that's really great. And I don't think, and I understand where people are coming from with that trusted advisor thing, and I understand that, but, you know, I don't think that what you have been saying is any less valid because you're going through this, you know?
But it's been on a pedestal nonetheless, and that's always the danger, right? I'm the one on the stage.
Right.
The lights are shining on me. Cameras are pointed at me. People are talking about me, and I am saying things that I've learned along my travels, and I have the benefit of sort of a monologue situation, right? You know, I can tell people exactly what they need to hear: face the Yeti, tame the machines, you know, have an epic practice. And by the way, it's all true. Right. But then you go to apply those things in a real life situation and it can get a little bit sticky. And so I just want to make sure everybody hears me very clearly. I may be on a stage that's 6 foot higher than you, but I am an entrepreneur, small business owner, getting out there trying to get it done as well as everybody else, making the mistakes that a lot of people make, maybe some that others don't. And I'm imperfect. I'm a messy person working with messy people to try to make the world a little bit messy, less messy. And if the pedestal ever blinded you from the fact that I'm just a messy person, then you're unblinded, right? But I'm still the person that cares very deeply about accountants, small business success, and that'll never change.
Well, and that's one thing that I want to mention when you say I'm an entrepreneur. One of the things I think that has always made you very relatable and has drawn people to you, and you and I had this discussion a couple years ago, I think at dinner, I was in Atlanta for something, and you and Wendy and I went out to dinner, and you had kind of made a couple comments about, oh, I'm a true CEO, and I can't remember what it was, and I said, no, Joe, stop, like, don't, like, that is not what makes you relatable. What makes you relatable and what draws people to you is that you started out like I did, like Dawn did, like Bryce did, like MB. You started out as a pro advisor with your consulting practice. You started out in the same place, and that is what draws people to you and what makes you very relatable. So I just want to thank you. Like I said, I don't think that what you're going through, and I'm going to say it again for anybody out there who's thinking this, I don't think what you're going through makes what you have said about being a trusted advisor and the advice that you're giving about running people's practice any less relative or less valuable.
Well, thank you for
that.
So
moving on, you're welcome. And so moving on, venue change. So I know that you mentioned this, and I'm not going to get into that because I was going to ask you about the Hyatt Regency, and you've kind of already talked about how that relates to the bankruptcy and having to commit. And I do remember hearing you say one time, like, you got the deals that you got at Disney because you committed to doing multiple events. So I understand how all that works. But the one thing that I want to mention about the venue change is what are the reasons? Why are you moving the venue so close to the conference? And the other thing I want to mention is that Account Techs reported that you have decided to move to the Cobb Galleria Center. Am I saying that right? Am I?
Yes, you are. Yes,
okay.
You are.
Well, I didn't know. I couldn't remember what order all three of those words went in. It's kind of like Advanced Certified Pro Advisor.
Yeah,
I never know.
They're kind of interchangeable, right?
Advanced Pro Advisor or Pro Advisor who's advanced certified. Like, I never know what order. So anyway, the Cobb Galleria Center, they did report yesterday afternoon that you did not have a signed contract, and so I kind of want to speak. I want to kind of
let me address that because when I did read that article, I reached out to the folks at Account Techs, and I made sure that there was a clarification added to that because the implication of that sentence sounds really, really bad. So, we were scrambling on a venue change. I want to address the first one first. When the carousel stops, then the hotel relationships, these multi-year hotel relationships, it all kind of, it just hits you at one time. So I'd contracted with the Hyatt Regency Atlanta. I'd contracted with a different property for 2019, also a Hyatt, a different city. And I spoke with these properties, is there a way that we can work under the new operational structure of the streamlined organization with food prices, food and beverage minimums. Hotels are extremely expensive places to host events, $60 a gallon for coffee. The average food price per person per day, just to give you guys a simple lunch and a continental breakfast, is $125 per person. And so an extremely fine dining steak restaurant dinner would be the equivalent of a scoop buffet and a continental breakfast in a hotel. So and that's typical. That's not just of the Hyatt. But I was like, I want to work with you. Let's work together to come up with a budget that's more commensurate with what the Cobb Galleria Center would do. You get into a non-hotel venue like the Cobb Galleria Center, the food is 50% the cost. The coffee is 30% the cost. And the food and beverage business, if you just did the math, 3 days, $125 a day, we're paying, about $500 by the time you get taxes, service charges, and everything else in per person just to put them into the show. And some people come to the show for $550, right? So the profit center or where the real economics happens is on the show floor if you feed folks like I feed them. So anyway, you get all of that in, and I just it was not a responsible thing for me, or really even a feasible thing for me, to continue to do hotel kinds of execution. And when they wouldn't work with me, I didn't do it mad, and Stormova just said, this is the inevitability, guys, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to have to structure the cancellation fee through the Chapter 11, pay you over a period of time in order to create a viable go forward for the show. So I will take care of the Hyatt Regency Atlanta. I will pay their entire cancellation fee, but I will do it over 4 or 5 years through the Chapter 11. And now by going to the Cobb Galleria Center, we pick up several things. We get a bigger venue because we were sold out already. We were going to have to close the doors. We get a bigger venue, more breathing room. Everything's on one floor, whereas at the Hyatt Regency Atlanta, it was 7 different floors and 2 different towers. And we have the ability to provide the experience everybody's come to expect at 50% the cost. It was the responsible decision I need to do for the short-term pivot as I'm taking care of the Hyatt Regency on the long term.
Okay, fair enough.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and somebody just texted me that maybe you should have Panera cater, and because you were talking about Panera earlier.
I love Panera, by the way.
They were craving Panera, so I just wanted to mention that. I thought that was kind of funny.
That is funny.
Yeah, the other thing, Monday you and I discussed that you guys were working, and I mentioned it earlier too on the show, working on a list of hotels, right, for people to.
So let me tell you why you don't have links yet. Yeah. Okay. So I want to address a couple of things.
You've got to get your shit together. I know you got to get all your ducks in a row.
Yeah, exactly. This is a bit of a scramble.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I want to know, we know why you got to do it. We're not worried about why we don't have hotels yet. What I'm just wondering, what everybody really wants to know, they all get why. What they want to know is, what's the ET? Do you have? And you don't have to do a commit date, but just a ballpark.
Well, of course, as soon as possible, right? As soon as possible, which is nice and vague. But we actually, in our sort of excitement now about this new venue and kind of a better understanding of what happened in this last minute switch, I want to address something. No, I don't have a signed contract with the Cobb Galleria. Accountex is absolutely right. So the way the process works is you first reserve the space. Then you do what's called an RFP, a request for proposal, giving you guys a little background into the convention and conference space. Then that is approved by the hotel. They say, okay, this event fits, we can handle it, we have all the requirements needed. Then you work, in this case, through the Cobb Convention Center, which is an actual Cobb County office. They work on getting all the surrounding hotels in place to put it all into a single wrapper. That includes hotel room blocks, that includes the contract at the Cobb Galleria, and includes the food and beverage commitments, audiovisual. They put it all into a bow, then you sign it. So if somebody at Account Techs had called and just called the Cobb Galleria Center, which, you know, good editorial work for them, right? Do your homework. And they said, you know, does Woodard have a signed contract with the Cobb Galleria? They're going to look on their books and go, nope, no signed contract here.
Right.
But is it reserved? Yes. Is it an RFP approved? Yes. Are we working with the Cobb County people to finalize the process? Yes. Will the ink be signed the same time I'm sending you guys out the links? Yes. But normally we have the luxury of doing this years ahead. So everybody's scrambling to help us get it done, get it out the door,
right.
and then get you guys some hotel links. So we appreciate your patience.
So any idea? Week, 2 weeks, month?
No, not much. Not much. You know, what I'm telling everybody is, you know, in the month of March, you'll have some hotel links, and there are plenty of rooms. And so around the Cobb Galleria, first, there are some hotels that are attached. And by the way, some of you guys aren't waiting for links. Please wait for the links, because I can get you a better room rate. If you just go out and find, okay, well, this hotel's attached to the Cobb Galleria, let me go book a room, you're going to pay more. So just, if you want to pay more, go for it. But I'm negotiating much better rates for you guys. But if some of them are attached, some of them are connected with a pedestrian bridge, like the Omni and the Sheraton, and some of them have complimentary shuttles. But they're all, I called it, whenever I was talking with you earlier, a golf hit away, right? They're, you know, within just less than half a mile from the convention center with these complimentary shuttles.
Right.
But there are 2,062 guest rooms. I just happen to know that number because I just looked at it today. 2,062 guest rooms that support the Cobb Galleria Center. And with 1,600 attendees, the way our attendees room share, because it's a big family, we don't need more than about 1,300 on peak, and we are good to go.
So you have 1,600 people registered, or does 1,600 people mean? I'm going to interrupt because that's a number.
Yeah, the 1,600 people is the projected, right? We've got really good at our projective analytics.
Or attendees, staff, exhibitors?
No. Accountants is 1,200. Then you add in the folks from Intuit. Their delegation ranges from 60 to 100 any given year. And then you've got the exhibitors and their teams. And you get all that. That's the under the roof number. That's the bragging number, as we call it in the industry. But 1,200 is the number I watch very closely. Now, what do we have as of today? 860. But again, projective analytics over years, we know that, you know, X percentage of our people come in, you know, the time between April 15th and June 15th. So as long as we trend like we have in previous years, we'll have 1,200. If we don't sign up anybody else between now and June, we'll have 860. So it's going to be a great show and going to be, you know, one for the record books.
I can dig it. So speaking of hotels, what about people that didn't book at the Hyatt? By the way, I just want to let you know, I never got an email saying that booking was open for the Hyatt. So I actually didn't have a hotel room.
You didn't? Yeah, you didn't. Well, I'm sorry about that first. So sorry about that, but it actually was good for you.
At this point, it doesn't matter. At this point, it doesn't matter. And I'm actually glad, because then I didn't have to have.
So everybody got a cancellation. Everybody who had a room at the Hyatt, their rooms canceled for their convenience automatically. They received an email. It came about the same time as my venue change email, right? Timed that way on Monday morning, so that they just knew everything was taken care of, and then the Hyatt knew, because if I put mine out ahead of the Hyatt, they would have been burning up the Hyatt switchboards trying to cancel their rooms. So we timed that out, and now it's just a matter of, you know, when these links come in. But I don't want people to have to feel like they're scrambling here. You know, well, of course, if you want the one physically connected, you might want to act pretty fast. But the reality is we've got plenty of guest rooms, and there's even a lot of talk on the part of my team. I typically don't share the location out in advance, but as you know, the theme of the conference is now taken precedence over its location. We started that, you know, last year. So, you know, that we're taming the machines is more important to me than what city we're in. But we like this facility so much, and it has such growing room that, you know, and it's economically viable. Plus, being local, that was a lot of our cost in producing a show: site selection, you know, planning trips, traveling, shipping. You know, this venue is just 20 miles down the road. You know, this may become a long-term home for Scaling New Heights. and
right.
we'll see how people react to the venue first, and then we'll make our decision.
All right. Well, the question I was going to ask was the people who maybe did not book at the Hyatt Regency, because I know not everybody always stays at like on the property, right? Some people do Airbnb, some people do home away, rent a house, some people choose to find a budget conscious, more budget conscious, like a cheaper room someplace else, and they may have prepaid. What I'm wondering is, how, and you kind of mentioned it, how far away is the new location from the Hyatt Regency?
Oh, yes, that's a good point.
And is there ample is there some public transportation where if they don't need to maybe cancel their existing hotel or their accommodations, or are they going to need to, should they plan on cabbing or Ubering or renting a car?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. And we have gotten this question quite a bit. First, if you can exit wherever you have rented downtown without penalty, that's my recommendation to you, or with an extremely moderate penalty. That's my recommendation to you, because it is only about 10 miles north of downtown center, and it is going against traffic. So you're traveling, against traffic on the way there, against traffic on the way back in terms of traffic patterns. So it wouldn't be a bad drive. But hotel rates in downtown Atlanta are prime rates. And then you're dealing with the urban traffic patterns of trying to get out of town and onto the interstate. Then, of course, there is no light rail, so that means that you're using Uber. Even if you use Uber and you pair up with other attendees, it gets expensive. So if you can get out, and then come up to one of the hotels that we're going to give you guys links for in a little bit.
Right.
And you'll have a much better experience, in my opinion.
Okay. So one thing I want to mention, we have technically 8 minutes left in the show. So if you're listening live, we're probably going to go past the 8 minutes because I have a lot of other questions. If you don't mind, Joe, we might go past an hour because I want to kind of get. Okay, good. Because I want to get through most of this. So if anybody is listening and all of a sudden you're like, what in the hell just happened because we get cut off, it's because the show is scheduled for 60 minutes. But we will still be talking, and what you can do is you can go back to the same link that you used to listen live, and you can just kind of pick it up when the show is over and listen to the end of it. And I apologize for that. I honestly thought an hour was going to be enough time, but it's not because there is so much. And this is really great. Like, this is probably one of my favorite interviews in the 7 years that we've been doing this show. So I just wanted to mention that. I also want to take a moment and mention our sponsor, Neat.com. You can go there and check them out. You can also go to our website and click on the link on the right-hand side. Just click on their logo. That'll take you to the their accountant partner page. Next question I have is about exhibitors. So, and the other thing too is we mentioned emails a lot. So we know that you were having a shit ton of problems with, do you like how I don't have any problem swearing now? Like 7 years ago when you used to come on the show, we would never have sworn, and now I'm just like, whatever. But basically, you have had a bunch of problems. I know you don't, but I do. Woody doesn't swear, but I still do. I do. So you've had a ton of problems with stuff going to email because you were using that server. So
let me tell everybody what happened.
Wait. Before you do that, I want to ask the question is, what are you going to, is there going to be one place where people can go to keep, are you going to have the one place that has updates? Are you going to kind of like, do you have a blog? Like, here's our latest update. Do you have like a newsletter, email, something that somebody can subscribe to or pay so they don't have to worry about whether or not the mail and checking their spam all the time and making sure that they're getting any correspondence from you guys and they're up to date with what's going on?
Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you what happened. We were sending out, of course, hundreds and hundreds of emails, and we had to do it very quickly. It had to be very specifically timed starting with the Monday morning announcement about the venue change, and then going all the way up into some of the announcements about the bankruptcy we filed. And so we were using what's called an SMTP service, right? And I'm not going to mention which one because I don't want to give them any bad press or whatever. But the reality was this SMTP service caused, maybe because it's used by so many people that aren't doing it for legitimate reasons or whatever, it triggers junk filters and spam filters. So Woodard.com was fine, and info at Woodard.com and all that was fine, but the relay we were using is what it's called, was triggering that. And we didn't even realize it was happening until a bunch of people said, well, we just read an article on Insightful Accountant about a venue change, or we got something from the Hyatt, but we didn't get anything from you, what's going on? And we realized it was systemic. Then we said, okay, well, we're going to have to start sending emails one at a time. So our team got busy sending emails one at a time to 860 people. And we did that about the venue change, and then we turned around and we did it about the bankruptcy. So we are looking at different SMTP relays that would help us. We're also looking at just relaying right over what's called Woodard.com to Office 365. That's an option. But to get to your other question, the best way for folks to stay informed, if you're already registered for the show, we're launching our attendee portal in a couple of weeks. It always has the latest and greatest. ScalingNewHeights.com always has the latest and greatest. And then if we do need to push things out in a sort of an editorial way, we still are very good friends with the folks over at Insightful Accountant. So if we have informational sources or whatever, we'll write a little article, or Murph will tell folks about something and then point over to the website. So if you're subscribed to InsightfulAccountant.com's newsletter, then you'll also get all the updates about Scaling New Heights.
Okay, cool. Okay, so thank you for that. Now, exhibitors.
Yep.
I know, because I work with app developers, and Richard Ropa, he's our other co-host, our newest, latest. He's our app interview co-host. He works a lot with the app developers and does a lot of consulting. And what I'm being asked, and I know what he's being asked too by a few, is a lot of times exhibitors, they negotiate very, very specific locations where they want their booths. Based on the layout. And so right now they have negotiated the cost and the location and everything that has to do with their booth based on the layout that was established for the Hyatt. Will the new layout at the new venue be similar, or will these exhibitors have to renegotiate and sign new contracts and go through that whole process again to get the location?
No, they're not going to have to go through the whole process again. So some things you just are thankful for the little moments of luck, right, that come. But if anybody's seen the exhibit for this year, it doesn't matter if you haven't. It was landscape. It was very wide and not as tall if you're looking at it like a grid. Well, where we're having the exhibit hall now at the Cobb Galleria, it's portrait, right? So it's tall and not wide, but the dimensions of the two exhibit floors are about 10 feet off on the width and about 20 feet off on the height, being just slightly larger. So what we're doing is we're taking this existing show floor, which you already entered from sort of the bottom right if you're looking at it landscape, and you enter from the bottom if you're looking at a portrait. So the entry point's exactly the same, or almost exactly the same. We just turned it. We rotated it clockwise by 90 degrees. We're just finishing up all of our CAD drawings on that. My team's going to be getting that information out to folks. But the majority of people are going to have better traffic flow, and they're going to be in the exact spot they were in with the same neighbors and the same layout, just with greater visibility and more space in the aisles to interact with folks, because it's just a little bit bigger. The folks that were right at that door, because the door shifted a little bit, we're going to work with them, because you pick that, right? You pick right in front of the door. So we're going to work with those guys, shift some things around, make sure they're still right in front of the door. And we've got a plan to make it all work. So if you're listening here and you're an exhibitor, just know we have a good plan. It's going to have very, very nominal disruption. And we're going to be getting that plan out to you guys next week.
Okay. Fair enough.
No, that's great. Yeah. Just some specific questions too, Joe, regarding, I was interested in the Taming the Machines theme. How did that come about, and what does that mean? Can you break that down for us?
I can, and since I know that the live stream's going away in 30 seconds, I just want to say one more thing before I talk about Taming the Machines. When those 860 emails that we sent out to folks telling them about the Chapter 11 and the venue change, all within a 1-week period of time, we had one person cancel, just one. And that's another thing that's going to make me cry, because this is a community. This is a family. This is not just a bunch of people going to a trade show. They stick together. Whether they're sticking by me or they're sticking with each other, I would actually prefer the latter because I want to build a community, but they are sticking with us. Not one sponsor has expressed an interest in leaving the show. So we're good, and the show is strong. And now let's get to tame the machines. So
awesome.
And this is really what it's about, right? We want to get past this bump in the road, and we want to get to why we're doing the show. And that's about the coming technological disruption, or actually present technological disruption. I can really drill down on this, but it's going to be better if folks just go to scalingnewheights.com and register for the 4-part webinar series. But to give you the sort of 60-second overview of what I cover in 4 hours on that series is, you've got a combination of data automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and they're changing not just the professions, but really the whole of business, which is why we have Steve Forbes coming, because Steve Forbes can speak to the impact of this on the whole of business, really in the world. And then Daniel Susskind, who is an Oxford professor and was a consultant to the UK government, including working at Downing Street, he on these very topics, he is going to come and talk about the impact specifically on the professions, which is the book that he wrote, The Future of the Professions. But if you're looking and laying it out, there are 4 industrial revolutions. I won't get into all of the other 3. I talk about that in the webinar series. But the 4th industrial revolution is the first time we're dealing with thinking machines, steam engines and robotics and factory lines. Those were machines, but they weren't thinking machines. And you get into the world of thinking machines, and I'm using thinking with air quotes because they mimic human thought. But you get into the world of, say, IBM Watson, and all of a sudden the machines are doing our work. The not the labor worker, not the blue collar worker on a factory.
Did we get cut off?
Oh, I think we lost him. See, Joe, you
Did
still
we
there?
lose them? I don't know.
The show him is still
I'm just trying
live, but
there he is. Wait,
Good.
we lost you for a second.
Oh, did you lose me? What was the last thing you heard? I apologize.
That's okay. We just lost you for just
steam
a
engines,
second.
a little bit after steam engines. Yeah, you can just roll on.
Yeah. So the steam engines were machines too, but they weren't thinking machines. So now that we have thinking machines, all of a sudden we have to think about, okay, our entire trade is to think through things. We're knowledge work. So what is the response that we have to this? What is the timetable? And this isn't a Chicken Little situation. Somebody emailed me once and said, please don't just try to scare me for 4 days. And we're not going to do that. What we lay out, we do this in the webinar series, we're going to do it throughout the entire conference, is 2 responses. We're going to talk about not so much what's happening, but how do you respond? And there are 2 responses to this disruption. You leverage these machines to create greater profits, or you transcend the machines doing what they cannot do or what they ought not do. And that means we're going to challenge folks, and Ron Baker is coming to do a track co-branded with VeraSage on that very thing, transcending the machines by moving from or by embracing, in addition to service work, embracing knowledge work, of course, because right now the machines can do a lot of the services, right? Even your sponsored NEAT does a lot of that work we used to do on data entry, right? They can do a lot of the service work now, but they're not quite at the point where they can do the knowledge work. At least, IBM Watson's not deployed in the mom and pop shop on the corner. They're deployed in Walmart, or that happens to be one of their clients. So they're not disrupting us yet. So get into the knowledge work and get ahead of them. But ultimately, Ron Baker's going to challenge us all to get into the relationship work, because the machines will never be able to comfort. They will never be able to encourage. They will never be able to inspire. They will never be able to feel. And if you are knowledge with skin on and caring, all wrapped in a bow, you will forever transcend the machines. And that's
cool.
The whole point of Scaling New Heights this year.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that theme. And then are there any new tracks or sessions this year? Because I know last year you had the entire Spanish speaking track. So is there anything new for this year?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a track dedicated to disruptive technologies this year. Blockchain, the distributed ledger thing, cryptocurrencies. data automation, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, given the theme of the show, right? We are bringing back and expanding our Hispanic track, and we're really excited to have that community continue to support us. We're going to continue to grow it. You know, that by the way, that's not just us. I read a demographic at the Latino Tax Conference that the fastest growing demographic in the accounting profession is the Hispanic community. So, you know, if I'm going to empower small business advisors, I want to be doing it in Espanol, right? So they're going to be there. And then as with every show, and this is a big differentiator for us, over 60% of our content every year is brand new. We don't do a lot of rinse and repeat. And that's, of course, if you take out the certifications, which are more cyclical in nature, right? If you just take the things we produce, not the things that we license from Intuit and curate from Intuit, just that over 60% brand new content.
Nice.
Cool. And
that's great.
Any cool new big names for keynotes? I know everyone.
Yes, there are. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking, because we've had Forbes and we've had Susskind on the ticket for a long time, but Randy Johnston is joining us this year from the main stage, his first ever appearance at Scaling New Heights. He's going to be doing a brief main stage presentation, like a little TED Talk, if you will, and then he's going to be doing a couple breakouts for us. I've long wanted Randy to be on, at the show, so getting him is going to be an amazing development. But hot off the press, you won't even find this on our website yet because it's so new, Watson will be there. IBM is going to be present. They're going to bring Watson with them. And in addition to speaking about artificial intelligence and the impact on the professions and business, we're going to have a conversation with Watson. And I was sitting down, if you don't know what Watson is, folks, Watson is IBM's artificial intelligence platform. You've probably seen the commercials or the Jeopardy show where it beat all the Jeopardy champions. But Watson is a thinking machine, and it's very conversational. So I said, when Watson is there and we're having a conversation with him or it, I said, is it a him or it? And they go, well, we use both. So okay, we're having a conversation with it. What do I need to ask so I know I get an answer? You ask Siri or OK Google the wrong way, and they're not gonna understand what you're saying, or they're just gonna do a web search. So I said, what if I were to ask Watson something like this? Is it your job to put accountants out of work? I said, can I ask that? And IBM said, we're happy for you to ask that. And I said, well, then what will Watson say? And I was just sitting in a hotel room across from the IBM executive last week talking about this. He looked me dead in the eye. He goes, I don't know. You have to ask Watson. So, and he was dead serious. He had no idea how Watson would respond to that. So we're going to have a blast with that conversation. Yeah. And if we can possibly do it, we're even going to have some audience Q&A interaction with him. If we can't swing that, because there are 1,200 people in the room, IBM's hanging around all of Tuesday and Wednesday with Watson at their booth. Everybody who comes to the show can have their own little conversation with Watson.
Interesting. Wow. That'll be interesting. That'll be fun.
Yeah, love it.
Oh,
cool.
So
well, those are the only S&H specific questions. I know Stacy had a few other audience questions, Joe, but yeah.
Yeah, we've got a few audience questions, and we can get through these pretty quickly. One of them is pretty cut and dry. With the change and venue, is transportation to and from the airport going to be available, or do we need to arrange it individually, is the question.
Okay, so first, you can arrange it individually, and that may be the most convenient way. Taxi cabs line up like any major airport, but Atlanta is one of the many that support shared ride services. So just go to the website of your preferred choice there. It is a 20-mile drive, and going around what we call the perimeter, the west perimeter, it is not a big traffic conduit for Atlanta in that particular little quadrant of our perimeter. So a 20-minute drive should take you about 20, maybe at most 30 minutes in some kind of shared ride service or taxi. But if you prefer to take a shuttle, the Cobb Galleria Center does have a shuttle. It runs on a particular cycle, and I don't know what that cycle is off the top of my head, probably hourly, at a pickup location. And if you time it just right or want to have a Starbucks or whatever and wait it out, then you can take the complimentary shuttle. The catch is it will drop you off at the Cobb Galleria Center. So if you're not in the connected hotel or the one with the pedestrian bridge, you're going to have to take or the Omni also as a pedestrian bridge. Then you may have to call the hotel and have them run their shuttle or walk the half a mile. A couple of choices there.
Someone just messaged me and said, Starbucks, I want Panera.
I like both. But either way you want to go, they have both. I believe they have both at the Atlanta airport. So.
Oh, so funny. My own audience question is, you keep mentioning the pedestrian bridge. Are these covered? So are they like habit trails? Like,
depends. Okay, depends. So the Renaissance, which is one of the hotels and is the largest that supports the convention center, is physically attached. The Sheraton Suites, and you can see all of this if you just Google it. And I want to stress this, folks. Please don't jump the gun, or you're going to pay more money. There are plenty of rooms, okay? But the Sheraton Suites that is connected to the Cobb Galleria is connected with a covered pedestrian bridge. And there's a little bit of a stretch where you have to walk from their parking garage to the bridge, just a tiny little stretch. But the Omni, which is attached to the Braves Stadium, which is also connected by pedestrian bridges, all there together as a complex, that is not a covered bridge. That's an open bridge. So hopefully it won't rain quite as much as it did when we were in Disney. Otherwise, beautiful property became a torrential downpour for everybody walking in the rain. But if we have clear skies, we're good. But I want to stress this. No matter what hotel, even if it's connected by a pedestrian bridge, they still run shuttles. So if it's raining, just wait, talk with your friends, network, have that cup of coffee, and then wait for that Omni shuttle to come in and take you home. Okay,
fair enough. I like the habit trails. I like, like when we go to the Chicago Midwest Accounting Show, I like how the hotels across the street are always attached. I call them human habit trails, like little hamster tubes. I love those. Okay. Yep. Here's another listener question. And normally I capture people who are asking the questions. I didn't this time. I just copy and pasted because they were coming in so fast and furious. So I just copy and pasted them from our Google form. So here's the next question. How do you expect these financial issues will impact your ability to schedule events and book venues for future conferences?
Yes. So that's one of the reasons that we are thinking about making the Cobb Galleria our future home. The economics of a convention center are just very different than a hotel. So say that and they don't have to be booked out as far in advance. Obviously, I was able to, stroke a luck here, get this one with about 5 months runway. So, when you're booking a hotel, there's extreme risk for them. They've got guest room nights they could otherwise sell to travelers. They've got food and beverage minimums they have to hit. There are all these ratios of convention space, food and beverage to guest room rates, and they have all this math that goes into it. So whenever I'm booking a hotel, I have to book many years ahead. And I booked the Disney 2017 back in 2011 and barely got it. Even hotels that aren't even built yet, like the JW in Denver right now, is booked through 2021 or something like that on our dates, and they're still open sky. The beams are just going up. So it means I don't have to do as much runway. I don't have to go as far out ahead to get venues that fit us. There are only 20 hotels in the entire country that fit us, right? But it also means that the risk portfolio goes down, so the economics change drastically. The Cobb Galleria's entire economic model is to just book their facility. They don't care if I don't feed you guys one drop of food.
Right, but I think what people are asking, you're kind of answering the question of how is moving to a convention center from a hotel going to affect things. But the question was, how do you expect the financial issues that you're going through to affect you being able to book these events? Do you think it's going to have any effect on that?
It won't. That's the point. Yeah, I walked right in the door of the Cobb Galleria and said, I just filed a Chapter 11. Can I have your space? And, because the economics are different. And the fact that the facility cost is so low in proportion to the overall value of a hotel contract that even with my current operating expenses, I can pay the vast majority of this when I walk in the door. Now, I'm not saying it's not still serious money. We're talking six figures,
Right.
but the Chapter 11 doesn't mean I don't have money. It means that I restructured my debt. So I just put down the deposit and off I go. And but if you guys like the space and say this makes a good home for us, and that's a big if. I want to hear back from you guys. Then I would go back to them and I would say, okay, let's book you guys for the next couple years in advance. But again, unlike a hotel where the second the ink is dry, you've got a six-figure cancellation fee.
Right.
Here, each year exists in its own bubble. If that answers your listener's question.
I think that's fair. Well, that leads me to I had a couple people mention, and I don't ever remember you saying this, but I haven't been going to. I mean, I've only been going to 2011, 2012. So maybe I have been going for a long time. I just realized that was a really long time ago, and I'm getting old. But one of the things that somebody mentioned they were a little upset about was you had always said, I'm never going to have this at a convention center or a conference center. So obviously that's out of the, that, I mean.
Well, and I actually used I used the phrase, Stacy, mark my words, I will never be at a convention center, right? So, I mean, I was very adamant about it. And I didn't want to do it because most convention centers are huge and cavernous and they would have swallowed us up. The other reason was just, everything kind of being self-contained into a single hotel. Those things were very important to me. But I will tell you that holding on to those kinds of things that I deemed to be important, some of the attendees being important, I placed too much importance on them. So if we get back to what mistakes did I make, I made the mistake of staying in hotels too long. After I had outgrown them, I had to book the bigger ones. So I should never have been that adamant. What I should have said is when we cross the 1,200 mark or the 1,000 mark, we're going to move into regional convention spaces. But this is not a cavernous place. It's carpeted. It's got wooden doors. It's warm, low ceilings. It's going to feel like a hotel.
Well, and my point is, at this point, the shit's changed, right? Like it's different than it was 5 years ago or last year or 3 years ago. And so now if you want to continue doing this, you have to make changes. And so, that's
desperate times, desperate measures, right? That's the
right.
approach.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I always, when I do any of my coaching and I work with other pro advisors, it's make a plan, but you can change it. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Make your business plan and set your goals, but know that you can adjust those as circumstances change or, situations, or you realize that maybe you enjoy doing something a little bit more than you did before, or the economy changes or whatever. So I don't know. And I only had had two people say that to me. And I don't think that that's that big of a deal. Yeah, it may affect a little bit the whole, everybody under one roof and that whole, just running into people. But I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal because, neither Disney was ideal. I'm not, my opinion on the Disney thing. It was. Talk
about some place that needed covered walkways, right? I mean, yes.
Well, no, it's not just the rain. It was very inconvenient. I mean, the first one, as a speaker, I think the first words. Oh, yeah,
that first one, I forgot. That was such a grand idea. While we're cataloging Joe's mistakes, right? While we're cataloging Joe's mistakes, what a grand idea to take a monorail between breakouts. How fun is that?
Right.
Until you've done it maybe the second time. And then you're like, I'm done with this. And we're spread all over the Magic Kingdom.
I got off the plane, dropped my bags, and had to go to keynote practice with you guys. I'll never forget this. I didn't even say hello to you. I walked up to you and I said, never have this here again. It was the first words out of my mouth. And then I said, come here, give me a hug. So, because, yeah, I get that. So I don't think that's the big of a deal. Okay, so moving on. Next question is, would you have handled the timing of your announcements any differently in retrospect? And I think you had a plan for it, which didn't work out, but would you here's the question.
That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
I would have handled the announcements differently if I had an ideal situation. I would have gotten everything settled for the entire package we talked about earlier with the guest rooms in place and the links and everything else. Yes, that's exactly the way I would have done it if I wasn't in a scramble situation. I would definitely have waited until next week to tell everybody about the Chapter 11 when I had more information about my own Chapter 11, and more documents were public that people could refer to. But I didn't get that luxury either because it hit CPA Practice Advisor before, ahead of our timetable. So the simple answer is yes. I would have handled it all very differently if I wasn't in a scramble to create a home for scaling new heights that worked, going forward. But the scramble paid off. We're here.
Right.
We're here.
Right. So here's a question that I think is really interesting. So you're saying that you're moving into a bigger space, and somebody is saying the Hyatt Regency Atlanta claims to have 180,000 square feet of event space, and the Cobb Galleria claims to have 144,000 square feet of event space. Why choose a location with less?
Yeah, that's really good. So let me address that. Much of the Hyatt Regency's event space, as I said, is spread over 2 different hotel towers on 7 different floors. So when you're in an urban hotel, they can say we have X amount of square feet of meeting space. They also have more breakout rooms. They have something like 80 breakout rooms, but 40 or something of those breakout rooms hold 30 people, or they're boardrooms that hold 10 people. So they have a lot of little tiny spaces that are really good for, say, the Kiwanis Club or whatever is meeting downtown Atlanta. But even though we had rented the entire convention space, in terms of functional use, because we don't have any breakouts or hardly any with 30 people or 20 people. So in terms of functional use, we weren't able to use 20, 30% of their space. And then what was usable, the containers only got so big. Their exhibit hall didn't have the, like we talked about, it's a little bit smaller, but we're just using 1 quadrant of the exhibit hall. In future years, or even in this year, if we have more sponsors join us, all we have to do is pull an air wall, and we can double, triple, quadruple the size of the exhibit floor. But the biggest thing is with our 15, I think it's now 12 concurrent breakouts, the rooms hold 150 to 200 people each, or we can go to 40 or 50 each. Now, and it's all on a single floor. So partly it's usable space versus bragging space. And the other is how the space is laid out and proportioned within the center.
All right. So I think this next question, you kind of answered it when you were talking about, having to pre-book. But I'm just going to say it, and I'm just going to say, no, I don't want you to answer it because I think you already have. I feel good about the future for you, but could you address these big debts that remain for past shows? And I think we've established that. So I don't think we need
I'm
to
pay them.
That.
I'm going to pay them, and I'm going to pay them 100% of what I owe them. But I'm just going to do it in a structured way that doesn't hurt my ability to go forward. So I know I'd already answered it, but I just wanted to do it again because I want to just really make it a matter of record. I'm going to pay these creditors, and that's the reason I filed the 11 is so that I can. Now, if you're not familiar with the Chapter 11, they give you an extended period of time. And the creditors work with the bankruptcy court to come up with a payment plan that's functional, and it has all transparency. So my operating budgets and financial records are all presented to the court, which are then presented to the creditors. And so what's going to happen over the next few years, after I've taken care of my family with my same reasonable salary, and I've taken care of my employees and my operational expense, lights are on, I buy you guys the food at the show, and some R&D budget and everything, the net income from my organization, which is healthy, will all go to my creditors, much like net income would go to shareholders, right? It'll be distributed to them, and it is my job to make that net income as high as it can be so I can shorten the bankruptcy, but the big goal is to get them paid at 100%.
All right. So here's another one. Joe's interview with Insightful Accountant seemed to make Chapter 11 sound like a regular part of business. Are we to believe that filing Chapter 11 is actually normal and was an intended part of the Woodard business plan?
Okay, first, not an intended part of the Woodard business plan by any stretch. And I didn't mean for it to sound like it was normal, but I didn't want, what I was trying to communicate is kind of like I just did there. People sometimes hear the B word and they go, Chapter 7, Chapter 11, bankruptcy. has become synonymous in our vernacular with out of money, can't go forward, going out of business. And what I was trying to say is, no, Chapter 11 is all about staying in business and staying in business in a viable way. And so probably normal wasn't the right word, but what I should have said isn't abnormal, right? And that there's a long respected legacy of businesses that have filed 11s and emerged from that all the stronger while taking care of their creditors. So that's all I was trying to say.
All right, I get it. Okay, last question, and then we'll go because I know we've been on the phone for a long time. Are you going to have Scaling New Heights 2019? So you're going to be Scaling New Heights after this year? Yes,
and I think we've already addressed that by me already kind of thinking through the location. But there are a couple of reasons why I'm going to have Scaling New Heights. One, and they kind of echo what I had said earlier. The biggest reason I'm going to have Scaling New Heights is we've spent 10 years building this, and it's not just a show. It is a family. It is a community. The people that do work the hotels or convention centers or whatever, they tell us, we've seen this at family reunions in our space. We've never seen a corporate show where people are hugging each other's necks and laughing in the hallways and crying together and sharing things together. It is really a special moment, unlike anything else I've ever seen, and I am going to fight and fight and fight to make sure it never goes away. So that's number one. Secondary to that primary goal is it is still the biggest profit center in the organization, or one of the biggest. And if I am going to take care of my creditors, I'm going to keep the net income high, then I'm going to need to keep Scaling New Heights there to make them whole and kind of redeem the situation. So 2 big reasons Scaling New Heights will endure.
All right. I think that is
awesome.
A good way to end that. Thanks, Joe, for taking all the time. I really appreciate it. Not what we originally envisioned when we were emailing Monday, but still I think great and kind of clarifies things for a lot of people. And I just want to mention one last thing, and that is, we'll have you back once you get, let me know, send me an email or a text, and we'll have you back to talk about the hotels and how all that's going to work.
Sure.
Just so that, we'll have you back for that. And I want to again thank Neat.com, our sponsor Neat. If you go to our website, radiofreeqb.com or qboshow.com, you click on the Neat logo, it'll take you directly to the accountant program. What do you got? Anything you want to say?
I just wanted to thank Joe for his time. Thank you, Joe, for your time.
Yeah,
sir.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. I love your audience. We both jointly love this group of people, and I appreciate the opportunity to address them.
Hey, thanks for coming
awesome.
on. Oh, I do want to mention our next show is going to be 3/22. It's going to be March 22nd. We have Kevin Hua from apps.com talking about all the new stuff that's coming from apps.com. And the last thing I want to say is...
All right. Take care, Joe. Take care, Stacey.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye, you guys.